Hello again, everyone. Insights with Bob and Mike, your podcast for staying in tune with Puget Sound commercial real estate. Things are changing by the week, it seems. Today we're going to be talking once again with Bill Robinson.
Bill's with APT Appraisal, and we spoke to him a few months back. He sees the whole picture, and we're going to find out what he's seeing with values and rents currently.
Okay, so let's see.
Hey, Bob, how are you?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Not too bad.
So things are different now, I guess. So it's about time for us to do another one, I guess.
I guess it is.
So are in-city properties selling, those within the geographical boundaries of Seattle, or are people moving more to the outlying areas?
Well, they're still on a percentage basis. I mean, I pulled up some stats on SEBA, and it looks like the percentage is off a couple percentage points from maybe 67% of the sales were in Seattle for the entire kind of King County, Snohomish County, Pierce County area. So, and 64 in 2019 and 64 in 2020. So, I'm sorry, that was for the King County area, not the 3-county area.
So is that the number of sales?
No, that's the number of sales. It looks like we peaked in the last 3 years, according to SEBA, at about 176 sales in 2019. And SEBA is always a little slow in reporting, but they're showing us with 67 sales of 5 units and up in Seattle for 2020 and 146 for 2018. So, but that's not a definitive number, but it's, I mean, as far as the entirety of the sales, but that's what SEBA has through their system.
And I pulled up Pierce County and Snohomish County post-COVID, and I don't know if this is accurate because, like you say, it's not a complete compilation, but it said 29 in Pierce County, 11 in Snohomish County. Does that sound right to you?
So the post-COVID, I don't have the figures on that. What I have is Pierce County in 2020 was 37. We've got Snohomish County is 16, and King County is 38. So we have a total of 158 sales that have taken place that are leased through SEBA. So, but that's off quite a bit from obviously what we showed for 394 closings in 2019 and 306 in 2018. So the sales volume is down certainly for the Seattle area overall. But interest is certainly up in the suburban markets.
How much less?
Well, I guess it varies on property. The Seattle core, I guess we're seeing vacancy is certainly up. Collection loss is up. We've got some tenants that have decided not to pay rent or can't pay rent. And how that's going to be dealt with going forward, I mean, it's pretty much uncertain from a standpoint of the collections. A couple of reports that we've done here recently have had a couple of tenants that have been in the $30,000 to $40,000 in back rent owed, and that's going to be certainly a huge sum of money to try to make up. I don't think that's going to happen. But I would say overall, I don't know what you're hearing, Bob, but just talking to the property managers that we work with. Certainly rents are off probably at least 10% in the Seattle core. And then you have rental incentives, and those have varied from anywhere from typically a month to maybe up to 3 months for the new construction. Mm-hmm. And there's, obviously other perks that are involved in that, whether it's free parking. So it just isn't your rent. Could be forgiveness for pet fees or rent or any other thing.
Yeah,
it'll definitely come back. I mean, I don't see that. I mean, I guess if things may change up a little bit as far as what housing types are in the strongest demand or what rental apartments are in the strongest demand.
Michael is burning with questions here. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, studios seem to be, in really high demand right now just because you've got your kind of self-contained unit. And then 1 bedrooms. So those have performed pretty well here. It's just when you get into the 3, 4, 5, 6 bedroom house type thing that those are, I mean, I've never seen so many units on the market all at once. Typically, those are pre-leased out at the U.
So studios are doing better in the U district, is what you're saying?
Yeah, they're doing better in the U district and one bedrooms. So, I think it's just the people are making a decision to live on their own in a unit than to live in any type of group housing right now.
Bill,
Is that what you're seeing?
Okay.
Well, hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I've been monopolizing the conversation. Go ahead, Michael. Michael's burning.
Well, I don't want to step on your point there, but something you already touched on a little bit is the timeline that we recover. Is the industry standard or thinking that after we get a vaccine, it'll probably be about a 6-month waiting period before everything's back to normal, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's going to be longer than that. I mean, I think there's some economic hurt. There's a lot of, restaurants and local businesses that have had to change up the way they do operations or completely closed. And that obviously was a big driver for a lot of these in-city apartments. And then there's people that have made the lifestyle choice to move out of Seattle. It's either to get a bigger, cheaper apartment somewhere out in Shoreline or up in Everett or Linwood, or they've gone down to the south end. So I don't know really what the timeline is, but it's going to take a while, I think, to get back to where we were from the standpoint of confidence and rent levels. And I think from a standpoint, Bob, you and I have been talking, and we saw kind of a chink in the armor from a standpoint of the multifamily market prior to COVID, just with the amount of new units built. And I think we didn't tap out, obviously, in the employment base, but we had a huge surge in employment hires in the last decade. So, and now we have competition from Bellevue and other municipalities, whether it's Renton, trying to woo some high-tech companies into what they've got for some of their new development down in that area.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that values and rents were beginning to peak in 2017 prior to COVID. And when COVID hit us, it was just like this perfect storm.
Well, I think what we saw was 17 and 18, at least from the reports that we did back in the day, and then also in just talking to property managers. There was a lull in 2018 where the market pretty much plateaued, and then we had kind of a resurgence again, and that was in the first quarter of 2019. And I wouldn't say necessarily rents were climbing, but they were at least sustainable. So if you had a one bedroom on Queen Anne that was new at whatever the amount would be, $2,200, you were able to get that on the next tenant moving in, and that's no longer the case. So, I think we saw that. Go ahead.
Oh no, sir. I was gonna ask. Have you noticed any difference from a collection standpoint in? You mentioned that the studios and one bedroom units, in a place like the U District are doing well, but are cheaper units? Are the collections better on those just because of what's going on in the city economically, or across the board? Nice penthouse, fully decked out units, same problems that 900 square foot studio has, or $900 studio has.
I guess it's two different markets completely. So I think what we've seen is what I'll call them the affordable studio units. Maybe not the one with all the bells and whistles, but it's in a neighborhood area where people want to live for a variety of reasons. Those rents they've certainly decreased, but maybe not at the same level as the new construction. And I think part of the issue with the new construction is the effective rent they're actually collecting. They've had to lower the asking rent, but then you've got, on average, again, 1 to 3 months of free rent offered, and you look at that, and it's about 8% for 12 months. So maybe you have a discount of another 25% for a period of time. And so what that means going forward with renewal of those leases, a year from when they started, It's pretty hard to get back, maybe 25 or now 35% if you lowered your rent 10% to begin with. And that's worked out fine. And, we've appraised the majority of the properties in the market anyway at some point in time here. So we have data on all those from a standpoint of historical pictures on the property and finish and that kind of thing.
So when are the demands of a lender back to financing again? Has that changed? Are you still required to see X amount of units?
Nothing's really changed on that front from the last time we spoke. Most of our appraisals are now done. We only see vacant units in building common areas. And so that'll be, laundry rooms, storage rooms, hallways, stairways,
so if
along with any vacant units.
If there are no vacancies, you're not required to go in and bother the tenants?
Correct, yeah.
Ah.
So that's, and that's had, I guess the only issue with that is then we're relying upon management or ownership to have pictures sent to us for the units. And as you know, there's things online now for different advertising sites that we can look at. But most of the building owners, just because of pre-check-ins and marketing and whatever else, they've got some good pictures that we can reference and put in the report provided by management or ownership, and that's worked out fine. And my question is, where do we go from all this change? I mean, what stays and kind of what do we revert back to? And I mean, being the old guy, I think it is important to meet with people face to face and do all that. I think this younger generation, that's no longer important to them. Whether it can be a Zoom meeting or email, that's more than sufficient. And I think part of that is just the amount of data out there and the technology, and it's probably a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Michael? You're one of the younger guys.
Well, the one thing that we're missing right now because of COVID is the people who can't do those jobs remotely, whether it's the food service industry guys, the bartenders, waitresses, and all that. So while those people might be struggling right now or even moving out of the city, eventually they got to return. And that I think will boost the multifamily market because you're not going to drive 3 hours to work at Starbucks or to work at whatever job you got to be on site for. But
right.
But I do agree that it is less important to our generation to meet face to face, unfortunately, and some even prefer to do everything remotely, which is lends itself to. I mean, I have a buddy who works in the LA Unified School District who does it from Lake Tahoe. So I mean, you can do that now where you couldn't do that in the past.
Right. And, I've got friends, kids that are in Florida and their companies based out of New York. And, people are all over the world, essentially. And I've got neighbors that are, high-tech workers that they've had people on their teams decide to move to Montana or somewhere else. And they're allowed, or at least they have been allowed, to do that. And I don't know if we talked about this last time, but what's interesting, I think, is the corporations have now figured out that the cost of living in, could be a lot cheaper in, Missoula, Montana than Seattle, Washington. So the compensation packages reflect that. So
I think I mentioned last time that my daughter works for a company called Orgain. She's their head registered dietitian. And Orgain is based in California, in Los Angeles, and she lives in Denver.
Right.
And here's one for you. I used to be in the radio business, and I worked with a lady who used to work at Como, and she is now the morning disc jockey in Austin, Texas, and she does it from her home in Tacoma.
So you had a set of questions, Bob, that you sent me, and I don't know how you guys are going to edit this, but one of them had to do with real estate taxes. And
yeah,
I think that's become a huge issue from our dealing with it. And I think obviously from an underwriting standpoint, because, in some cases, because of market conditions or the assessor over assessing a property, we might see assessed values that are anywhere from 110 to maybe 130% of what we think is the current market value for that property. But we obviously have to use the current taxes in forecasting an expense for it. And so that's impacting NOI for a property. But with the uncertainty of, the outcome of a real estate tax appeal, there's not much else we can do. I mean, if you're buying a property, you're hoping that the assessor is going to listen to your argument, that whatever you paid for it, and that's the premise of our appraisal, is a sale of the property. So, if you've got a property that's selling for $2 million and it's assessed at $2.3 million or $2.4 million, you would hope that you could get your assessed value appealed and get some tax relief, but there's no guarantee to that.
But for the value, you have to use the existing billing for the value.
Correct. So, and that's been an issue from a standpoint of the NOI, not necessarily the overall value of the property, but the NOI. And then you guys can probably answer the question better from having to deal with prospective purchasers on this. But, what is the cap rate that they'd be willing to pay for a building, thinking that they could maybe reduce taxes? So, if it was a 4.5 prior, or buildings that were assessed at a ratio that's maybe 80 to 100%, if you're assessed at 125%, are you willing to shave 25 basis points off a cap rate with the idea that maybe you can get a lower taxes? I don't know. Most of the syndications we see that are put together, their underwriting's pretty conservative because they want to at least perform to or better than what they have for their investor pro forma. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, and I mean, it makes it tough as well because now you're not just, you mentioned utilities earlier, but utility costs and taxes are going up where rents in a lot of cases are not. So the margin there is getting very tight.
Right. And in Seattle and in other outlying areas too, a lot of the utility expenses are passed through to the tenant in some fashion, whether it's metering or surcharges on the units. And so some of that you can get some relief as a building owner, but you've got rental agreements in place that have got charges pretty much fixed for a period of time anyway.
Thank you, Bill. Bill Robinson, everybody, of APT Appraisal. Insights is the name of the program. We're with the Foundation Group. Call us anytime. I'm Bob Wright, 206-619-3274. 206-619-3274.
And I am Mike Walsh, 310-383-1570 is how you reach me. That's 310-383-1570. Give us a call if you have an idea for the program or a guest you'd like us to interview.
And keep in mind, we also do tax appeals. And if you're thinking of selling, we'll do a preliminary analysis for you. Nobody has more experience as a team. I've been selling Seattle apartments for 42 years now. And Mike has been doing this, including his property management, for 8 years. And Mike came to us from one of those big national firms. It begins with an M and an M.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, there's nothing that they can do for you that we can't do as well. With the advent of all this new technology, we can reach every buyer on the globe.
Insights. Until next time, everyone.